child's education, but don't want the child to be liable for the loan. But what we know is that oftentimes these are lower income borrowers and borrowers from minority backgrounds.
So why haven't Parent Plus borrowers been able to benefit from some of the Biden administration's repayment programs like SAVE?
SAVE and other income-based repayment programs are hugely beneficial for many federal student loan borrowers, but unfortunately in the rules written about who qualifies for SAVE and who can take advantage of it, Parent Plus loan borrowers are specifically omitted from that program.
What kind of situation does that put the borrowers in?
I've spoken with a lot of Parent Plus borrowers who are really struggling to get a handle on how they should start repaying these loans. We know that after that 3-year pause on payments and interest accrual, that pandemic era pause, that many borrowers are now preparing to repay or have already begun repayment. And Parent Plus loan borrowers find themselves in a harder spot. They're not able to take advantage of some of these income-based repayment programs like SAVE unless they consolidate their loans. But in consolidating their loans, they are then risking either having a higher interest rate than the one that they already have, or they are risking losing out on some of the benefits that they have from their existing loan. I spoke with one Parent Plus loan borrower based in New Jersey, and he said that what's been so difficult about this period of time is that he and his wife had done everything right. They had consolidated their loans, they had looked into getting the interest rate right, and then when they had looked at these new programs coming out, like changes to PSLF or the SAVE program debuting, a lot of student loan borrowers are really excited, especially after the promise of forgiveness was thrust away after this Supreme Court decision. And people like Howard are still left wondering, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Do I just pick up where I left off and things are just as bad as they were before? And unfortunately, the answer is sort of, yeah, just do that.
So you mentioned consolidating their loans. Are there other steps that Parent Plus borrowers can take that would allow them to take advantage of repayment programs?
There is a loophole in the consolidation process that does allow borrowers to remove what student loan servicers see as the parent tag from their loans. This is how you identify the loans as Parent Plus loans and not as other federal student loans. But it's a fairly arduous process. It involves consolidating 2 or 3 separate times with 2 or 3 separate borrowers. And we already know that the Education Department is aware of this loophole, and they say that they are going to close it by July 2025. The other option that parents have, which is much less arduous and potentially less risky, they have more time to do it, is that they can be able to take advantage of the PSLF program or the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. But that's only available for certain kinds of borrowers and for certain rates.
What happens if a Parent Plus borrower defaults on a loan?
Exactly what happens if a federal student loan borrower defaults on a loan, but the difference is Parent Plus loan borrowers are potentially in a more risky state. I talked to one Parent Plus loan borrower who said that after not paying his loan for a handful of months through a mix-up that wasn't really his fault, he received a letter that said his Social Security would be garnished, and luckily he was able to call his servicer and solve the problem, but definitely a huge risk for Parent Plus loan borrowers.
By the way, what's the latest on the Biden administration's efforts to put a widespread student loan forgiveness program into effect?
We unfortunately don't have many updates on that. They've promised that they're going to try and work through a structural solution to this now that the legal path has failed. But right now, the Department of Education is encouraging the majority of student loan borrowers to investigate their options like SAVE and hope for that as a path to eventual forgiveness in lieu of a widespread student loan forgiveness program.
That's Wall Street Journal personal finance reporter Julia Carpenter. And that's it for your Money Briefing. We'll be back tomorrow morning with WSJ's Jeffrey Sparshaw to discuss why more employees are working less hours but making the same pay. This episode was produced by Ariana Asparu with supervising producer Melanie Roy. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Nissan. For every driver who wants more, whatever your more is. More action, more freedom, more fun. From sports cars, sedans, EVs, to pickups and crossovers, anyone can find something more.
Hey everyone, Parker here. Before we get into this week's episode of the show, a little bit of news. Code Switch is coming to Arkansas. We're going to be performing a live show in Little Rock on December 7th. We'll be sharing more information about that, including where to get your tickets really soon. But in the meantime, we need your help. We'll have portions of the show with our famous Ask Code Switch segment, where we answer listener questions about how to deal with racial questions that come up in your own life. They can be silly, serious, social, personal. We want to hear them all. So please, send us your questions, especially if you're from Arkansas or live in Arkansas or want to know something about racial dynamics in Arkansas. My co-host and I will choose some of these questions to answer live on stage. So if you want to hear our brilliant musings, reporting, and advice, email us at codeswitch@npr.org with your questions. Subject line, Ask Code Switch. Again, that's codeswitch@npr.org. Subject line, Ask Code Switch. Alrighty, on to the show. Hey everyone, you're listening to Code Switch. I'm B.A. Parker. Just a warning, there's some salty language and very loud rock music in this episode. In my teens and early 20s, I dabbled in the punk scene. The scene had a level of chaos I could work with while still going to church on Sunday. I lean against the wall and nod my head to aggressively loud hardcore music, giving no care to lifelong eardrum damage, and just rock out to myself. And through the sweat and the noise and the darkness, I'd find the one or two other black kids in the room, and it gave me comfort. And every once in a while, I'd get up the nerve to go into the pit. I didn't feel safe by any means, but I would feel galvanized. The first time I got into a mosh pit, my date shoved me and encouraged me to shove him back. There was this transference of energy. I couldn't explain it. But in my experience, the volatility of mostly white mosh pits always forced me to do some kind of cost-benefit analysis. My need for community versus gauging the intentions of a drunk white person wanting to dive at me in a crowd. That didn't feel fun or freeing. My guard would stay up. Then I experienced the freedom of a black mosh pit. Plus-size black femmes having a twerk circle to the gnarliest bass chords you've ever heard.
That's the plus side of being in black punk circles, is no one's just beating the shit out of each other.
White men trying to kill you for no reason. Yeah.
Recently I went to a black punk show in Brooklyn with a friend. Fellow journalist Ahia Netta Oregon.
I don't know if you saw the girls walk out as I was walking in, but we had on essentially the same outfit, and I think we are going to the same event.
I mean, there was two black people in dog collars.
Legislatively. Overriding Beshear's vetoes, the legislature passed the state's near-total abortion ban, outlawed gender-affirming health care for trans youth, and put limitations on how teachers discuss sexuality and the legacy of slavery. Here's Republican House Speaker David Osborne.
Yeah, 110 times we have overridden the vetoes of this governor.
Even on issues where Beshear and Republicans do agree, like infrastructure, GOP lawmakers often complain about the relationship between the branches of government.
I wish that this governor would more aggressively seek the input of the legislature because, again, we're the ones that are going to be tasked with passing those things.
Beshear tries to be a unifying force.
Folks, I have never seen more potential for this state, for all of us, for every family, and for our kids and our grandkids than I see right now.
During the annual Kentucky Farm Bureau ham breakfast, he sat near the center of the long banquet table, surrounded by several Republican officials. As he frequently has during his campaign, he talked about bridges and roads, education and new jobs, steering away from many so-called culture war topics.
In the end, the legacy that we leave to future generations isn't red or blue. It's not Democrat or Republican. It just lifts every single Kentucky family up.
Kentucky's is one of only 3 races for governor in the country this year and is predicted to be the closest. The election is November 7th. I'm Sylvia Goodman in Louisville.
We'll hear about Republican candidate Daniel Cameron tomorrow.
Support comes from Harmon Facial Plastic Surgery in Hyde Park Square. With the mission to help people in their journey toward feeling confident, fellowship-trained Dr. Jeffrey Harmon specializes in the extended deep plane facelift, a procedure that lifts the cheeks, jawline, and neck in a natural direction to address the signs of facial aging. Request a consultation at harmonface.com.
Cincinnati Edition is a radio talk show with a twist. It listens. From politics to technology, the economy to education, the arts to healthcare. Cincinnati Edition explores the issues that affect Greater Cincinnati and the Tri-State. and we invite you to join the discussion. Call us at 513-419-7100, email talk@wvxu.org, or share your questions and comments on Facebook or Twitter. That's Cincinnati Edition, today at noon on 91.7 WVXU.
Coming up in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock on the BBC NewsHour, another communication blackout across Gaza, but there are reports the Rafah crossing into Egypt is opening for the severely injured and some dual nation nationals. And we'll have Taiwanese perspective on the impact of climate change. It's all coming up on the BBC NewsHour. That starts at 9 on 91.7. Southbound 7175 Buttermilk Pike, there's a wreck on the right shoulder. Southbound 71 after State Route 73. This is in Clinton County. There's a wreck. And southbound 7175 at Kyle's Lane, a broken down vehicle on the right shoulder of the exit ramp. 9 first morning weather, partly cloudy to sunshine today. The high 45, clear and cool tonight, down to 29 and sunny. A slight warm up tomorrow, the high temperature 52. 31 now in Cincinnati.
Local support for Marketplace Morning Report comes from Bartlett Wealth Management. Wealth management takes time. Time that can be better spent managing a business. The experienced team at Bartlett helps cut through the noise of a complex financial situation so clients can focus on what they manage best, their businesses. More at Bartlett1898.com.
A teachable moment this morning about how the federal government plans to borrow all that money between now and January.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business. From small business to big enterprise and everything in between, Amazon Business helps simplify the supplies buying process. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
I'm David Bruncatcher. The Federal Reserve will wrap up its two-day meeting on interest rates later today with Chair Jerome Powell's news conference in about 5 hours. Rates will likely stay steady, and investors are focusing on something else. The Treasury Department's news just now about how it will borrow more than $100 billion for its new accounting quarter, and to do it, it will issue slightly more short-term debt. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer has more on why the pros are watching this.
4 times a year, the Treasury Department announces how much the government will borrow and how it will borrow for that quarter and in the near future. It's usually a snooze fest. Morgan Stanley Global Chief Economist Seth Carpenter made those dry announcements years ago when he was at the Treasury Department.
Part of the objective when I was doing the press conferences was not to make headlines.
But no more. The interest rate the government pays on the bonds it issues to borrow money has soared, getting investors' attention. Things like mortgages are tied to bond rates, so Carpenter says they're getting pricier too.
When the 10-year Treasury yield goes up, the 30-year mortgage rate goes up, and we've seen mortgages up around 8%.
And the Fed didn't have to lift a finger. In fact, later today, Fed Chair Jerome Powell is expected to announce the Fed is leaving interest rates unchanged, letting the bond market do the heavy lifting. The Fed has been pushing interest rates higher to cool the economy and beat back inflation. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
S&P and NASDAQ futures are really quite steady with the news from the Fed coming around 2 Eastern Time. And another number, 25, the number of ships that will be allowed through the Panama Canal per day starting Friday. That is down from the normal 36. It hasn't been raining down there, and the water level in the canal is running low. It was the driest October in that region since 1950. We'll know today how much was spent to build houses and apartments in September. Now, the cost per square foot for a new home is rising, but the average size of properties is shrinking as building costs and interest rates rise. Marketplace's Savannah Marr reports.
Early in the pandemic, some of our houses started to feel a little cramped.
People found themselves working from home, spending more time at home.
Rose Clint with the National Association of Home Builders says buyers were looking for home offices, space to work out in.
Of course, very low interest rates allow them to buy those bigger homes.
But now we've seen a force more powerful than work from home, which is affordability.
Allie Wolf with the housing data firm Zonda says higher mortgage rates are driving demand for smaller homes, and the average size of a new build is down 10% since 2018. And while today's buyers may wish they could afford that extra bedroom or a bigger kitchen,
having builders pivot towards more affordable homes usually by offering a smaller square footage, can be really good.
Wolf says it helps ensure there's affordable inventory in the long run. I'm Savannah Marr for Marketplace.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Affinity, provider of the CRM for the private capital relationship economy. Affinity knows who has the best relationship with the right startup. Affinity.co/marketplace. And by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Think or Swim. More at schwab.com.
Tonight will be 1 week since America's deadliest mass shooting of the year, when a gunman killed 18 and hurt 13 others at a bowling alley and at a bar in Lewiston, Maine. The shooter was found dead Friday night. Maine's governor, Democrat Janet Mills, now wants to convene a bipartisan forum to discuss the future of the state's firearms policies, with few details beyond that. Maine does not require permits to own guns or rifles. Concealed carry is permitted without a permit for most people over 21. For more, let's turn to Emily Bader. She's a reporter for the Maine Monitor, operated by the nonprofit Maine Center for Public Interest Reporting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Back in 2019, help me understand this, Maine legislators rejected a red flag law as some other states have. What was enacted instead?
So Maine enacted what's called a yellow flag law, which basically means that only police can take guns or weapons away from a person they deem at risk. Police get a report or something that indicates a person.
Okay. ID a goose by looking at specific features of its beak. It took a couple of years, but writing in the Journal of Ornithology, the team reports that their goose recognition software is now about 97% accurate.
So we have nailed the AI, but, then you have to ask yourself, well, does it matter in the life of a goose?
And here, let's just take a moment to talk about the lives of geese, because if you, like me, have lived around them, you know they are not the most pleasant animals. Kleindorfer says that's in part because they have a lot going on.
Geese have such drama. There's arch rivals and jealousy and retribution.
I mean, does this help explain why geese are such jerks to everyone else?
No, I would not use those words.
In the same study, Kleindorfer showed evidence that geese seem to recognize photos of their partners and friends. She thinks that makes sense because all that goose drama can only happen if they can tell each other apart.
This facial recognition, we think, might be a key component in higher level social organization among unrelated individuals.
That's probably why humans are good at recognizing each other too. This is not the first facial recognition for animals. In recent years, researchers have used it on everything from lemurs to bears.
One thing that's really exciting about this is that it's AI really being used for good.
Krista Ingram is a biologist at Colgate University in New York who has developed SealNet, an AI tool that can tell harbor seals apart. Before SealNet, she said the only way to identify individual seals was by tagging them, but that wasn't going great. They're pretty slippery, and the best way to do it is to try and shoot them with tracking darts.
It's very time-consuming, costly, and to be honest, it stresses them out.
SealNet can ID seals with high accuracy using just a photo, way easier and faster and just better for everyone. Both Ingram and Kleindorfer think that facial recognition is going to play a really important role in conservation and ecology. Researchers will be able to tell how many individuals are in a population. They'll see who's hanging with whom.
Yeah, I do think it's the wave of the future. And we need more computer scientists trained in behavioral ecology, and we need more conservation biologists trained in computer science. But working together, I think we can do this.
And citizen scientists could be part of it too. Sonia Kleindorfer hopes bird watchers will someday be able to snap a picture of a goose, ID it, and share its location with scientists. But she adds, just remember, her new research suggests that bird watching goes both ways. Geese can remember faces too.
If you are ever not kind to a goose, then woe to you the rest of your life. It shall not be a happy one if that goose finds you again.
So be nice to the geese, and maybe they'll be nice back. Jeff Brookfield, NPR News.
This is 91.7 WVXU. Governor Andy Beshear is Kentucky's only statewide Democratic elected official. Though the state has tilted heavily Republican in recent years, polling has consistently shown the incumbent with a positive job approval rating. Capitol reporter Sylvia Goodman says Beshear's first term in office has been marked by a pandemic and other tragedies.
About 3 months into his new role as governor, Beshear held his first live news conference about a disease just starting to work its way across the country, COVID-19.
So about 5 minutes ago, I filed a state of emergency so that we would have every tool that we could need.
The updates became daily as the pandemic worsened.
We're going to be doing these regularly.
His constant refrain was that Kentucky was in this together as business. Development updates as the pandemic waned, but he was thrust back into his role as the so-called consoler-in-chief in late 2021 when tornadoes ravaged western Kentucky.
We're currently at 74 Kentuckians that we've lost.
Then, the next year, record flooding decimated swaths of eastern Kentucky, killing 45 people and displacing thousands.
We are still in the search and rescue mode, and at least in some areas, the water is not going to crest until tomorrow.
When Beshear ran for Attorney General back in 2015, he already had plenty of name recognition. His father, Steve Beshear, was finishing up his second term as governor. Then he ran for governor himself in 2019 against incumbent Republican Matt Bevin and came out on top with just over 5,000 votes.
In Warren County, it doesn't matter where you go, everybody loves their school.
That's Jeannie Smith, chair of the Warren County Democratic Party. She says teachers' support for Beshear and disdain for Bevin gave Beshear the edge.
We really value education here, and he's a very pro-education candidate.
Bowling Green and Warren County were also part of the area hit by the tornadoes in 2021. Smith hopes Beshear's presence in the region has given him an advantage.
He's been there for us. He's helped get us through incredibly hard times. And now we're also seeing opportunities to thrive and grow.
Recent polling shows 45-year-old Beshear as one of the country's most popular governors. But many Kentuckians are still angry about the shutdowns Beshear mandated at the height of the pandemic. Julie Cancel, a Republican from Louisville, said she's usually not that involved in politics, but the pandemic galvanized her.
Seeing what has happened to the children with the excessive lockdowns. I know that Daniel Cameron would not have the lockdowns that we had before and the mandates.
Over the last 4 years, Beshear has been limited in what he's been able to accomplish legislatively. Overriding Beshear's vetoes, the legislature passed the state's near-total abortion ban, outlawed gender-affirming health care for trans youth, and put limitations on how teachers discuss sexuality and the legacy of slavery. Here's Republican House Speaker David Osborne.
Yeah, 110 times we have overridden the vetoes of this governor.
Even on issues where Beshear and Republicans do agree, like infrastructure, GOP lawmakers often complain about the relationship between the branches of government.
I wish that this governor would more aggressively seek the input of the legislature because, again, we're the ones that are going to be tasked with passing those things.
Beshear tries to be a unifying force.
Folks, I have never seen more potential for this state, for all of us, for every family, and for our kids and our grandkids than I see right now.
During the annual Kentucky Farm Bureau ham breakfast, he sat near the center of the long banquet table, surrounded by several Republican officials. As he frequently has during his campaign, he talked about bridges and roads, education and new jobs, steering away from many so-called culture war topics.
In the end, the legacy that we leave to future generations
Interested in seeing screen stories about platonic relationships than those featuring sex and romance. NPR's Chloe Veltman reports.
UCLA asked more than 1,000 13 to 24-year-olds to participate in its Romance or Nomance study. In an online video accompanying the findings, Anna, age 16, and 20-year-old Joseph say they're over watching people get hot and heavy on screen.
When there's media that has too much sex, me and my friends often feel uncomfortable.
My friends and I maybe awkwardly bear through it.
More than half of the study participants, including Anna, say they'd much rather see content focused on platonic attachments.
I'd love to see some great love stories on friendships and the trials and tribulations of that.
And nearly 40% of respondents say they'd like more stories featuring asexual characters.
Because their stories deserve to be told as well.
It's not that young people aren't interested in TV or movies and other media with sexual content.
That's Yelda Alls. She's the founder of UCLA's Center for Scholars and Storytellers, which conducted the study.
It's that they actually want to see more in different kinds of relationships.
Alls says the study didn't include questions about whether the kids look beyond TV, movies and social media for sexual content, for example by visiting porn sites on the internet.
Perhaps the prevalence of porn could be a reason why they feel that they want to see less sexual content in more traditional media.
In the study, Alls and her team say Gen Z's chaste and